1986, Tobe Hooper gave us one more glimpse into the depravity of the Sawyer family and left some questions like, how had this family not been found out after the horrors of the original movie? And more importantly, were the 80s ready for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2? Let's chop it up. I've always enjoyed the way this movie got kicked off with the two obnoxious dipshit high school kids that are headed to the Texas-Oklahoma game, driving down the Texas road, drinking, shooting holes through all the signs along the side of the road with a revolver. Stretch is an attractive female radio DJ that we meet next, and the drunken boys are calling into her show from the car. For whatever reason, the DJ cannot disconnect their call, so they have to hang up, and she gets very annoyed by the fact that they are obnoxious and aggressive and tying up her airwaves.
Real funny guys. Okay, you want to hang up now? Tying up the line. Hey, come on.
No way, baby!
Now, regretfully for these boys, they play chicken with the wrong pickup truck. And that truck catches up to them some ways down the road, and they realize in the back is Leatherface himself with chainsaw in tow. This entire gruesome encounter between the boys and Leatherface is caught on the radio station, on the airwaves, because of the fact that the boys never hung up the telephone that they were talking to Stretch on.
What? Come on, what is that? I don't believe it! Come on!
This Leatherface was a bit more bumbling, and they tried to inject a little bit of humanity in him when he becomes a little starstruck or a little lovelorn for a character coming up that we'll get to when we get to it. But I remember thinking this Leatherface looks vastly different from the Leatherface that we got in the first movie. Not necessarily a bad thing, but very, very different. Now, with Stretch and her radio sidekick left wondering what to do with this tape of these boys presumably being killed, we end up meeting Dennis Hopper's character of Lieutenant Lefty Enright. He's rocking a sweet cowboy hat. Apparently, he's a former Texas Ranger who is an uncle of Franklin from the first film. Stretch reaches out to him, wondering what to do, needing some help, and Lefty convinces her to play the tape on the air in hopes of drawing the killers out. Leads us to a fantastic scene inside the radio station involving Chop Top, who's played by the incomparable Bill Moseley. And he's a member of the Sawyer family, apparently, that we didn't meet in the first movie. And he's baiting Stretch into this dark room where the Leatherface is, quite frankly, ready to have a discussion with her about the tape that she played. This is one of the better parts of this film and should be seen by anybody who's a fan of horror movies. Chop Top is terrific in his insanity, and even though the love-struck Leatherface gets slightly sexual with Stretch with that chainsaw, very awkward by the way, we get a really good look at Leatherface during this scene though, and I gotta say he looks an awful lot like a shift manager at the grocery store I worked at when I was 14 years old. Shout out to Winn-Dixie. This is another example of the filmmakers trying to humanize Leatherface a little bit by allowing this girl to live because he's having these uncomfortable, weird urges towards her. The thrusting with the chainsaw was a little inappropriate, but let's face facts. He's a guy, and guys don't think clearly when there's a pretty girl around. The scene where Lefty decides to go chainsaw shopping is another must-see. Maybe it's the Star Wars in me, but the idea of a duel is tremendous. I loved lightsaber battles when I was a kid. I preferred that to anything else I watched. So the notion that there would be a chainsaw battle in this movie, I got pretty excited for that. Not as excited as the shop owner got watching Lefty try out the chainsaws he just bought from him. Very, very uncomfortable scene. Now this Sawyer family seems to be holed up in some sort of underground abandoned amusement park, which is where the last act of this movie is going to unfold. We've got a really enjoyable cast in this movie. Stretch as the final girl was pretty good. Her scream was terrible. It was one of the most obnoxious screams to ever come from the mouth of anybody in a horror film ever. I could have done without that. That really took me out of it in more than a few scenes. And she screamed at everything. Bill Moseley is so good in this movie. Dennis Hopper gave Leatherface a run for his money with those chainsaws. And then Jim Sidow as the Sawyer family patriarch was awesome. There's a scene at the end where Lefty is just destroying their compound. He's using those chainsaws. He's cutting down every support beam he can find. And the cook, the whole time, he's pissing and moaning about it. And when he finally meets Lefty, he asks him if he's from a competitive catering company or if he's from one of those health food stores. Just hilarious dialogue. Very funny. Interesting end of the movie. I don't understand why people all go crazy at the end of these things. I mean, I guess it's a pretty traumatizing experience, but shaking a chainsaw over your head and wiggling your butt, it's a strange way to react to any near-death situation. I'm going to give this one a 6 out of 10. I'm going to say it slightly ages gracefully. It is rewatchable considering what we would get. It's a gold star. But for me, 6 out of 10 is more than fair. This is Aging Gracefully. I'm Matthew Essex. I will see you on the other side.